Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Today we are checking out our first hunter build for renegades. This build utilizes our newest exotic armor to give us quite literally infinite 80% DR while remaining extremely lethal. If you are a hunter looking to enjoy some of the new stuff that this DLC has to offer, and maybe the best hunter build in the game, then look no further. But before we dive into the build, I need a favor from all of you. I'm trying to hit 25,000 subscribers before the new year. Right now, we are 1,500 away, and if you like builds, like informative Destiny 2 content, then you should subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and I do my best to put out good stuff for you. Also, on the topic of being helpful, there is a dim link down in the description for this build. There are also timestamps down below and on the YouTube play bar so that you can get your desired information without any hassle. Also, if I sound a little weird, I am recovering from being sick. Now, moving on to the details, getting right into today's build, we will begin with our newest exotic armor, Fortune's Favor. These exotic boots are based pretty much entirely around void overshields, and they read, after landing a final blow while at full health or when out of combat for an extended duration, your shields will slowly recharge into an overshield. When you have an overshield, your weapons gain increased accuracy, stability, handling, and damage against combatants. And final blows will grant a short period of increased mobility once the overshield is depleted. Now, there's genuinely quite a bit going on behind the scenes with this exotic. First, let's dissect how we get the overshields here. The easiest way to get one is just by having full health. In this example, we've taken some damage, we then heal our shields, and then shortly after, an overshield begins to take over our health bar. This is infinite. As we can see, our timer is stuck at 10 seconds and is not decaying at all. And the best way to think of this overshield is as an extension of our health bar, not a temporary buff like you're used to. However, it's important to note that while this void overshield is active, we take 70% less damage from all sources. Now, back to getting this overshield, the other way to get it is by scoring a kill while at full health. This will immediately start the charge up and is uninterruptible for a small duration of it. This means you will always get some overshield back when getting those full health kills, regardless of the setting that you're in. But what makes this exotic so good in its functionality is the simple fact that overshield protects your health, meaning 9 times out of 10, when you have an overshield active with this exotic, getting a kill will regen even more of that void overshield, usually topping you off. And yes, it is any kill. You can use your weapons, abilities, your super, all of it counts as long as you're at full health or have an overshield, you will get more void overshield. Now, as for the other bonuses from these legs, we get increased damage, and it's actually got some nuance. To begin, when using blaster type weapons, which are heat weapons, while you have an overshield, we deal 15% increased damage to low tier enemies, and we deal 20% increased damage to high tier enemies like bosses or champions. With a standard bullet type weapon though, this actually changes. That is 10% to regular guys and then 15% to high tiers. This exotic also does give us some miscellaneous stat bumps, but really who cares about ADSing faster, and that mobility bonus that we get when our overshield is empty is hardly noticeable. The main reason that we use these exotic legs is for the permanent damage bonus, which is noticeable, but mainly the permanent survivability bump that is a massive 70% constant DR. Now, out of our exotic armor, let's talk weapons. I don't use an exotic for this build. You can, but I don't. I found myself using last season's Mint Retrograde Rocket Pulse plus Uncivil Discourse, the latter being a special blaster, which will always be benefiting from that 15 or 20% damage bonus. Or you could swap that around and use Psi Eterna, your energy slot, and some primary blaster like the Fast Talker in your kinetic slot. I will say though, avoid glaives and swords, as this build is melee ability focused. Which, that note, takes us to our subclass. Here, we are on Arc for pretty much one reason. We want to one-shot enemies and heal while doing so. That way, we are always at full health, just in case we drop our overshield. Our Hunter definitely does this the best. For our super, we're going to be using Gathering Storm for the boss damage and add clear if you need to deal with a beefy wave. I just really like this super. Our class ability is Gambler's Dodge so that we can refund our melee ability with it, which we have that melee being the extremely potent combination blow. This melee ability grants us stacks on melee kills up to 3 and increases our outgoing melee damage up to plus 400%. This ability also heals on kills and refunds our dodge, making it a fantastic option. For our grenade, we run Pulse Grenade because it does pretty good damage. You can change this if you want. But then for our first aspect, we will be using Tempest Strike. This ability will override our melee ability while sliding, like Consecration or Lightning Surge. Here it says that it releases a forward wave that damages, jolts, and gives us bolt charge when defeating jolted enemies. Looking at it in game, this melee ability has quite a generous AoE, and it deals 498 damage at base, plus the 100 in jolt damage. But then if we get kills with it, including multi-kills, we can see Combination Blow ×3 as a buff, which increases our melee damage. And now our Tempest Strike damage will increase to 2,487. Also, this ability itself counts as Combination Blow and will refund our dodge while healing us a massive amount. Now, that refunding of our dodge directly correlates with our second aspect, Ascension. This aspect states that we can consume our dodge while airborne to give us some upward lift and jolt everything around us while making us and allies amplified. In game, we can do this coming out of a Tempest Strike, which will jolt nearby enemies while also refunding our melee in the process. It also guarantees amplification, which is a 15% damage resist buff to add to our already 70% DR coming from the Void Overshield. Now, finishing our subclass, we have the Fragments. The first one is also damage resist focus, being a Spark of Resistance, which is a further 25% DR when near 3 enemies. So all the time. Then we have our next fragment, which is Spark of Feedback, which causes our melee to do more damage when we receive melee damage. Then we have Spark of Focus, which will be a source of redundancy on class ability energy by increasing its regen when we sprint. Then we have Spark of Ions to make ionic traces, and lastly Spark of Beacons, so our arc special weapons blind enemies on kill or while we're amplified. Now, moving away from our subclass, we can talk about armor. Beginning in the stats, we want high melee, ideally 200, as this will provide a 30% bonus to our Tempest Strike. After this, we need 70 class, as this gave me consistent ability cycling. Then you want an even spread across grenade and super, which felt best. My health stat is really high, which is nice for health back on orbs, but it's kinda just because my hunter armor is bad. Also, to showcase what numbers a 200 melee stat Tempest Strike hits for, we are now looking at 3,233. This is more than enough to one-shot many bosses and champions, even in in-game activities, but that's not actually the cap for this build. Now, before moving on from armor, let's take a look at our armor mods. On the helmet, we run a special ammo finder and 2 hands-on. These mods give us mass amounts of super back on melee kills, allowing us to spam ours. On our arms, we have triple heavy-handed for a shorter cooldown between making orbs with our melee ability. Then our chest has an ammo generation mod plus resists for whatever activity we're running. Our legs have 1 recuperation to get a tiny bit of health on orb pickup, 1 invigoration to top off our melee with orbs, and an absolution to get a bit of all abilities back when picking up orbs too. Then our class item gets a special finisher for ammo, a powerful attraction to suck up orbs whenever we dodge or ascend, and a distribution to get a bit more ability energy for everything whenever we do the same. Now, taking a look at our artifact, firstly we can use Dielectric to get even more bolt charge from jolted enemy kills, as well as creating orbs and healing from those kills. We have a lot of heal on kill in this build. After that, we can use Armor Smith, which will give us even more DR and increased melee damage when breaking shields. This is plus 100% melee damage, by the way. And then we can also use Singularity Blade, which causes our melees to weaken and melee kills to cause weakening explosions. And since we have Void Overshield, which is literally permanent on this build, we can always make use of this artifact perk. We can also use Power from Pain if we wanted to, but we have so much healing already that it's kind of unnecessary in this build. And then if you needed a last column perk, Void Infestation will spread the weaken from our melee. But to now take a look at our outgoing damage, now including the artifact, our max damage that Tempest Strike hits for is a 4,575. That's up there with the highest damage abilities in the game. And even if you don't get all the benefits at once, we're still absolutely cooking. There's no red bar that's going to survive a melee from you, and most champions and orange bars are 100% going to die. Now, for the finale of this video, we got the gameplay loop. We begin usually by having a Void Overshield already. Since we start out of combat, we have it. That means by default, our melee is already weakened and we have a 70% DR. What we want to do now is build up combination blow stacks. Look for some weak red bar enemies and then Tempest Strike them. After that, ascend or dodge, ascend preferably. At this point, we've just scored a kill with our melee and made us amplified, which is another 15% DR to add to the 70%. We also should be near 3 enemies for 25% more. This means we already have the 80% DR that we're looking for and can now focus on increasing our lethality. Continue to uppercut and do an ascend or dodge to maximize our melee damage through combination blow stacks. And each kill, while that initial overshield is active, will be keeping our overshield topped off. Even if the overshield does drop, our melee kills heal back so much health that we'll begin to regen a new one immediately. Often, you can get a double kill with one uppercut, and the first kill will heal you, and the second will start the overshield regeneration. Like, the whole point of this build is that our normal health never gets touched, but if it does, one ability is enough to rejuvenate us. The main thing to do is really just focus cycling uppercut into ascend to see maximum efficiency. The overshield stuff kind of just happens without you thinking. Remember though, that with the overshield active, it's not just your melee that's improved, your weapons also receive that constant damage buff. Don't forget you have a grenade and super too. If the loop does drop, you don't need to wait long to have your abilities back due to our low cooldowns, and you can just sprint to get your dodge. And orbs do top up abilities if we ever miss a melee. Also, as a tip, this build is so broken in the new Lawless Frontiers activity. As you probably know, our base health is increased, and so is our void overshield health. Like, this thing gets huge, and where our normal health doesn't regenerate, void overshield will. So you're even tankier than normal in the Lawless Frontier. It is just a bit harder to get to full health if you dip down below it, but my recommendation there is to run the revitalized renegade ability. If you do drop below max health, pop that down, it'll heal you up, and then you can just score a kill and start regenerating your overshield. Honestly, if I was to say one thing about this build, it's how broken it is in there, and I really hope you try it. And that's it. This build is genuinely maybe the best hunter build in the game right now, and I stand by that. And thank you for getting this far into the video. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. If you want to support me, support the channel, a like, a comment, a subscription, sharing the video, I don't know, all that stuff, it helps out a ton. If you want to support me and support the channel, but you can't think of a comment down below Equilibrium, or maybe there's the name of your favorite dungeon. And with that, as usual, I hope you are having a great day, and I hope to see you around.